Thanks to Tinyware Games for providing me with a review code. Misc, A Tiny Tale is an extremely laid-back 3D collectathon with a large emphasis on its characters. You play as Buddy, who leaves his home with his best friend Bagboy in order to investigate the source of a mysterious explosion, while helping many fun characters along the way. Each level consists of a giant sandbox to openly explore. Your moveset is quite floaty, but because the challenge is never too great, the floatier jumps work out. In fact, you can't even die, minus for some bottomless pits. Instead of a nail-biting challenge, there's a nice flow to each of the levels. Collect a gear here, pick up some trash there, clean the stain next to it, turn in the trash for cash, and then use that cash to buy an item someone wants. Rinse and repeat until 100%. There's enough different activities to weave between, and the levels never take longer than an hour, so any particular task never gets too monotonous. It's a very chill experience, but an enjoyable one. The strongest levels are ones in which the gameplay and storytelling truly go hand in hand. It's easiest to showcase this by examining some levels individually. Before that though, I think it would be remiss to not mention the game's clear inspirations. You can tell that the developers loved the GameCube. There are homages to Pikmin, Mario Sunshine, and, of course, Chibi-Robo all over this game. Emails are read with funny voices, you'll find yourself in a replica secret stage, and you'll clean goop off the ground. There's even paint!
It's moving!
Although these comparisons are easy to draw, what helps Misc escape from the shadow of these giants is that these are simply homages. Misc plays quite differently from all of them, which helps it craft its own identity. The first two levels are a bit easygoing, as they act as a tutorial and introduce the storyline, chasing after the explosion. Where the game really starts to pick up is in Chapter 3's Scorching Kingdom, which also happens to be my favorite level. Before it starts, Bagboy is kidnapped and you have to go find him in a nearby town. Upon arriving, you're forced to scavenge for some coins to purchase the town's local mandatory uniform. After getting inside and talking to some locals, you can immediately tell that the leadership is comically overbearing, and eventually you meet a rogue citizen leading the efforts of the fashion resistance. Now seems like a good time to mention one of the game's biggest strengths. The character designs are consistently fantastic. Clock guards in robes, genius. Rolling bells, genius. Bodybuilder beetles in love, genius. Staple remover Hydra, genius. I'm not gonna show it, but there's one thing in Chapter 6 which looks sick as hell, and I wish we saw more of it. Everyone really lives up to the title of being miscellaneous objects thrown together. The only place the designs falter is actually with the main character, Buddy. His head, body, and general shape are great. He's a fantastic tiny robot. Except he can't really emote. Other characters have bending and squashing eyes, while Buddy's are always static. He is allowed to express himself with dialogue, and considering other characters do have more expressive faces, I think this might have been a deliberate choice to match with Bagboy. Regardless, it would have strengthened my connection with him if he could express himself more easily. I hate to make the comparison, but Chibi-Robo giving his signature death glare will always stick with me. Back to Chapter 3. In order to help the resistance, you have to venture out into the Badlands to collect the items each member is looking for. This is where the majority of the level's platforming and puzzle solving take place, and where you'll meet a couple of exiled characters. It's a very open space, but one you'll never get lost in, and it has a variety of different challenges. Once you've found all of the items, you're able to return to town and help end the enforced uniforms and save Bagboy. For me, this level is a perfect synthesis of the gameplay and storylines, alongside being the point where the game really starts to pick up some steam. Here's just a few highlights from some other levels. Chapter 5 has a lot of verticality, which makes traversal unique since you can skip over a lot of the ground. Chapter 6 has a cool gimmick where you're able to collect screws to fix some machinery, but there's way more than you actually need, so you can pick which ones to grab. It also lets you use these conveyor belts to move unneeded screws to other parts of the level for later use. I'm not going to show these two, but Chapter 7 and 8 have pretty unique vibes, especially Chapter 7. The only level which I thought was particularly disappointing is Chapter 4. It's not bad from a gameplay perspective, it actually has this cool structure where everything is built around a giant freezer you can go inside of and get on top of. Rather, from a story perspective, it slows things down by advancing one plot point a little bit, and is otherwise just a 3D platformer level. I think the idea was to take a break after the plot of Chapter 3 and before the rest of the story, which isn't actually that bad of a pacing decision. It just would have been cool if that meant the level was more of a self-contained side quest though. Like, maybe all the characters inhabiting the level are setting up for Christmas, and you can help them prepare and get gifts for each other. Ultimately, this is kind of a minor nitpick, I suppose. I will at least give this to Chapter 4. This is a big compliment, by the way. Shivering Shed sounds exactly like what a Pikmin area name would be. Great job. The last thing I really want to emphasize about the levels is the chill factor. It's a very laid-back game, and the experience of just slowly checking off everything to do in a level is great. There's a lot to collect, but not so much that it feels overwhelming. You aren't even required to get every single coin for 100%, and if you happen to miss any trash, you can activate a radar to help you pin down the last couple of pieces. These levels are definitely worth 100%ing, by the way. None of the content particularly feels like filler, and it unlocks the art gallery, which includes fun details in the game's development. Honestly, I wish there were a couple more levels to play. I enjoyed them that much. Honing further in on the story, I think its biggest weakness is just how long is spent on the explosion. You spend about half the game trying to figure out exactly what happened, with only a couple bits and pieces being told. You meet other characters as this goes on, so it's not like literally nothing happens in the meantime. But the explosion just kinda acts as a big MacGuffin that the characters are slowly marching towards. Once you do finally figure out what happened, the storyline gets way more interesting. For spoiler reasons, I won't talk about specifics past Chapter 6. Instead, I'll say what I generally thought. Overall, I'd say the story always wears its heart on its sleeve, and is incredibly earnest, which is something I really appreciate. The first half kinda lures you into a false sense of security, which made me very pleased with the turns it takes in the back half. I didn't realize this while playing, the game is actually rated T, and it definitely earns that rating. It's not afraid to try and tackle bigger emotional beats without much sugarcoating. There's one interaction between a character who deals with what I'll call the bad thoughts, and another character who just admits out loud how alone they feel, which really struck a chord with me. Hey, like 2 AM editor Jason here. I was looking through this part when I realized I didn't really talk about like the themes, I guess, of the storyline, so I just wanted to say it puts a lot of emphasis on like being yourself and celebrating the differences between all the characters, which might sound slightly generic, but it does it really well, and I liked it a lot. Okay, back to scripted land. It's not the pinnacle of storytelling in the medium or anything. Instead, this feels like a really personal story, which I ended up enjoying more than I expected. Now for some miscellaneous, notes I couldn't fit anywhere else. Misc does feature combat. I think I just said everything there is to say about combat. It's extremely bare bones, with AI that barely puts up a resistance. They don't even try to do anything after you hit them. In this kind of game, fighting is really just another activity for you to do, so it doesn't need a lot of depth to it. Your attack is more so a tool to break walls and hit switches. I just question if enemies were really needed at all. Like I said earlier, you can't even die. It also results in this bizarre moment where you get locked into a video gaming combat arena for seemingly no reason, even though your foes are rather helpless. Honestly, the game probably could have been executed just as well without any combat, which would certainly set it apart from most action-adventure games. I felt similarly about Chibi-Robo, but that game at least uses its combat to help elevate the finale of the story. Misc has a similar moment in which it could have used combat to strengthen the storytelling, but the opportunity sadly goes missed. On a similar note, I question if this game needed a stamina meter at all. I'm not really sure what the balancing idea for it was supposed to be. Going full speed lets you jump farther, so maybe limiting that was the thought process. I think I would have preferred if your constant speed was somewhere between the default and the run. On a more positive note, challenge stages I mentioned are a lot of fun and satisfy the platform lover in me. Each time I began a new level, I found myself immediately gravitating towards them, just to try it out. The only part I'll criticize is there's no easy way to reset them, which isn't particularly a problem, except during the final one, that requires you to carry a key. The key appears about halfway in, but if you die, then your key is brought with you to the start for some reason, instead of resetting at its own spawn. Carrying the key means you can't use your dive, which makes the beginning a bit harder than it otherwise would have been. Not impossible or anything, and might get patched, it was just kind of annoying. Quick tip for anyone who winds up playing. As you progress, you get these difference points. They aren't just a giant collective score and actually unlock emails in the gallery section. I avoided looking at the gallery art until I beat the game, when you really should be keeping an eye on this section so you can more naturally read through these instead of being overwhelmed after completing everything. Finally, I ended up playing this game on my $500 Mario Kart machine, and it ran really well. Nintendo isn't giving out development kits to most indies yet, so this isn't a version built specifically for the Switch 2. Instead, it has an uncapped frame rate and resolution, so it's able to push the system to a locked 1080p and 60 FPS, which plays really nice. I think it even hits those stats in handheld mode. It looks really good on the 2's display. Which is also how I feel about the graphics in general. For a small team, this game looks really nice. I even like the depth of field. Usually I dislike this effect, but here it helps the levels feel extra large. For completion's sake, I also played a bit of the game on Switch 1 just to get a feel for that version. Obviously, it runs worse and can be pretty low res in handheld mode, but for what it is, it's an alright version. I can't believe I lived like this for 8 years though. Overall, Misc Tiny Tale is a good time, and I would definitely recommend it if you're a fan of the GameCube games it takes an inspiration from, especially Chibi-Robo. I don't think it can make you feel exactly the way that game does. However, it might be able to make you feel something similar, but also different. I'm actually struggling to think of a recent 3D platform with slower pacing, so if that sounds up your alley, then this is a great candidate. Thanks again to Tinyware for the review key, and if you like this video, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.